Hey guys, it's Ryan. I just wanted to put together a video kind of going over all the features now that TaxiTuner is in V3. I know a lot of you have been asking for a more detailed tutorial about how everything works. So I wanted to spend some time today and really just break down all the features that we have to really give you a all-inclusive video. So some questions that I just wanted to get out of the way. So what is TaxiTuner? If you're just now getting into this, well, TaxiTuner it's a web application that allows you to modify the taxi routes for an airport. It also lets you set some of the parking information about various gates and ramps. It also lets you put points of interest around an airport. So not just limited to things on the ground like an FBO or something, but also maybe a quarry or some other visual reporting routes. So it contains all the features to let you edit that. It doesn't require you to install anything. If you just go to the TaxiTuner link in the portal, then you'll be right in there. It just runs in the browser. And it's also not specific to any sort of any flight simulator that you're using. So this is data that SayIntentions uses on the back end. It really doesn't matter what simulator you're flying with, it'll use that same data. So how do I use TaxiTuner? Well, like I said, just go to the portal and hit up TaxiTuner and it will bring you to this page that you see on your screen. So let's say that I was going to work on McCollum Airport. That's an airport that's by me. So that's Kilo Romeo Yankee Yankee. I'll probably use that a lot in this video. So the first step in using this would be to clone the airport that you want. There's 5 different modes that we'll kind of go through. There's view mode, select, move, create, and then points or parking. After that, you would make your changes. You would test those changes in your flight simulator. Once you're happy with the changes that you've made, you'd publish it and then tell us in Discord, hey, I just did this. Can you guys take a look at it? We have a TaxiTuner post in our Class D area in Discord. So that's a great place to let us know that you made a change and collaborate it. So let's talk about that first step, a clone. Well, what is a clone? Let's really talk about the details of that. So really a clone is just a copy of an airport that you can edit. So it contains pretty much all the data about an airport. It contains the taxiway information. It contains the point of interest, whether those be ground points of interest or in the air. It contains all the parking information. The one thing that it does not contain actually is runway data. That's actually shared across all the different copies of an airport. So you can only edit airports that you specifically have cloned, but you can make as many clones as you want. You can make multiple clones of the same airport. Sometimes that's useful. We can get into that later, but you can definitely make clones of multiple airports. So some misconceptions about clones. So like I said, they don't have any runway information. They don't have any information about the airspace, so we're not modifying any airspace data, so you won't be able to tweak any of that. One big question that we got is, hey, if I make a clone and then someone clones mine, and then I make changes to mine, do they get those changes? Well, they'll get whatever changes that you had in yours when they cloned it, but we don't try to push any new changes up to their clone. Once they cloned it, they made a copy of the current state, and now those are 2 different clones. They don't really inherit from each other. Another thing, we don't support cloning untowered airports. So really this is just to make air traffic control give you proper taxi instructions. Obviously at an untowered airport, no one would be giving you those instructions. And you could even see if we went to, I think it's Paul and Kilo Papa Uniform Juliet, you can see that it actually does not let me make a clone. Untowered airports do not need to be edited. So on the question about making multiple clones, should I make multiple clones? Well, yes, you can. You can make as many clones as you want. You might want to clone an airport just to mess around and make some tweaks without really messing up maybe another one that you've had. So maybe you're just doing some testing. Maybe you just want to try out the features of TaxiTuner. You want to delete everything and start from scratch. So yeah, you can make another clone. Another example of having multiple clones, though, are if there's multiple different versions of the scenery for an airport. So let me give you an example. We're going to go over to Atlanta, and you can see here, once it loads, there are some areas that on the satellite map are under construction. You can see that here we have this taxiway that's being built. It actually connects from Lima and then goes all the way over to November. But here we actually don't have that data. And you know, in Google Maps doesn't even have that data. But you may have an updated scenery package that has these changes to Atlanta. So you can make another clone of the Atlanta airport and include the data for this runway. And we can actually see, here's Pilot Guy's clone. He's actually done that for us. So if you don't have that scenery, you know, you might not want this clone. Excuse me. But there may be other airports that have similar things. So how do I make a clone? Well, that's really simple. We're going to go back to McCollum over here. Actually, no, we're not going to do this. I have another one that I want to do because it has some other things that I want to show you. So this is, where'd it go? Over here. Nope. Okay, PDK, that's why. All right. So here we have Peachtree DeKalb Airport. So to make a clone, all you do is choose what you're going to clone from. So I can either, in this case, clone from Asobo's data, or I can, Pilot Guy did a version. We can see actually he's done 487 operations on this airport. So every time you make a slight modification, this version updates. And you can see that this was done about 3 weeks ago at this point. But just to show you some things, I'm going to actually clone the Asobo one. And I'll give this a name of Ryan Clone. And now we're going to get our own copy of this airport that I can now edit. Some things that are worth noting, we actually have this edit button right here. And this actually allows us to also put in a description. So I'll put, this is a clone that we are using for a demo. All right, and we can save that. Likewise, I can click this delete button if I don't want it anymore, and I can send it to the trash. You can also edit there and edit the name if you need to, so we can just demo that. But just good hygiene to kind of use these fields, keep it up to date, have it make sense. So you can see that there's these buttons here. There's public, my default, and then global default, which is grayed out. So whenever you're testing an airport, you can click this my default button. Excuse me. And what that will do is whenever you are using the simulator, it will always use this choice for your flights. It doesn't matter if there's another global default or anything, it will always use this for you. It doesn't even need to be public. Obviously, you can only have one default per airport. So if you choose another one, they will deselect. And obviously, you can have no default. If you have no default, it will fall back to the global default that we have selected. In this case, it's Pilot Guy's version of the airport. If there is no global default, but we have Navigraph data, you can see this airport has Navigraph data, we'll fall back to that. And worst case scenario, no one has made an edit to an airport, there's no global default, we don't have Navigraph data, we'll just fall back to the default data that we had from Asobo. If you would like other people to be able to see your airport, you can just click this public button. And when you do that, now anyone else that searches this airport can actually see this data. And that's good for one, if you're sending it to the moderator review, if you feel like it's in a good spot, you'll want that public button to be checked. But also, let's say that you were making another one for a different scenery pack. Having it be public allows other people to choose it as their default without it necessarily being the global default. So let's go through this airport. I'm going to uncheck public. But if we click on this, we can see that we have different modes. So the default mode that you're in is view mode. And view mode is really just lets you kind of view what is at the airport. There's some sliders that are helpful. We can change this taxiway point size slider, which just changes the size of each individual nodes. We can change the line here. And there's also this section for computed taxi path size. We'll dig into this a little bit later, but a sneak peek is you can actually use view mode to place start and endpoints and see how it would compute a path. So it's going to do our best to get on a taxiway from my start point and then get to the closest place that I placed that. But you can just see as you change this slider, it changes that. And these are actually draggable too, so I could put it somewhere else and you'll see that the path updates. And just right click and clear both to get rid of that. So that's some information about view mode. Also in view mode, you can see that right now I have it defaulted to have the satellite data, but we can even get a street map, which gives us some data. And there's some other layers that are in here. I don't think the sectionals are working right now. I'll need to look into that. Nor does it. So we have some hybrid charts, but really for taxi editor, you generally stick with street map or the Google hybrid is pretty good in my opinion. So there's been some other questions about the interface here. So we can see runways are designated as these red lines, but they're surrounded by this red shaded area. So this is where we detect the runway area to be. They do include a displaced threshold. You can see that here we have a displaced threshold. So we feel like you're on the runway in this area. The taxiways are labeled, so you can see we have different colors. This blue color right here is reserved for any taxiways that don't have a name. But then we will cycle through these other colors, the yellow, green, purple, orange, and red colors to designate other taxiways. So you'll also see that on this page we have different colored dots, and that was a question about what these dots mean. So green dots or green nodes are just the general nodes that are there. They just differentiate between different segments of the taxiway. Blue nodes, like this one right here, designates the hold short positions, and then yellow is actually the ILS hold short areas. We don't actually use any of these right now, but this came from the data that was in Asobo, so I'm at least displaying it. But it's not really something that you need to worry about right now. We don't have any way to modify this data as it stands, but we're not really using it. Another question that people had is they would see some circles, and so we can dig into what those circles mean. If we look over here, we have some yellow circles. So anytime there's a yellow circle, that's where it has detected that you are crossing a runway. Really, you don't need to worry about these circles as much as people think that they do. They were really there for me as I was testing the path finding algorithm. I want to make sure that whenever you're crossing a runway, it's saying that you're crossing. So these yellow circles were a way for me to visually see that. Red circles, on the other hand, are something that you'll want to pay attention to. Anytime you see a red circle like this, the web interface has determined that there are two taxiway endpoints that seem very close to each other, close enough that they should probably be connected. And so if we zoom in here, there was actually a gap between these two endpoints. So as you're building these taxiways, if you notice some red circles coming up, that might be because you failed to connect two of these taxiways together that should have been connected. So keep an eye out for that. The good news is the pathfinding algorithm will actually deal with it. So if we actually place start and endpoints here, you'll see that it will actually bridge the gap right there, and it knows, hey, these are probably meant to be connected. So we generally handle it pretty well, but in the interest of getting good data, it's good to make sure you clear those up. Okay, moving on from view mode, there's selection mode. And so in selection mode, it allows us to select taxiways and change some data about them. So there's a few ways to go between those different modes. You can either use this drop down here to do select mode, or you can use the hotkeys S to enter select mode. Now, whenever you're in select mode, if you click and drag, you'll notice that it's actually just creating a bounding box. It's not letting us move around on the map. If you want to move, you can hold down Alt, and it will let you pan around on the map to select things. So I'm actually going to reduce the size of my lines here and just kind of show you how this works. So let's say that I wanted to select these taxiways right here. I can just click and drag across them, and you can see it bolds them a little bit. And we also have them filtered in this area. These are the taxiways. The main things that you would do in this mode is either delete them if you're trying to get rid of them, or you can do things like change their name or their width to something. So I can actually change this to Tango and click Save. And we'll see that these are now updated. We have Tango here. There are some other ways that you can select taxiways. You can actually just click on them right here. So if I had nothing selected and then click this, you'll see that it selects Tango. There's other hotkeys that you can use in this mode. So we talked about Alt, letting you pan around. Holding down Shift lets you add to a selection. So you can see now I've added these. Holding down Command or Control lets us remove stuff from a selection. So you can see that those are now removed. You can use those same hotkeys actually up here. So if I wanted to add all of hotel, I could do that, or remove all of hotel. And then also on the right, you'll see this area updates just visually. So if I was selecting hotel, you could see the blue is what's being new. But if I hold down Shift, you can see that Tango is there. Likewise, if I selected that now and I hold down Command, you can see Tango would turn to red. That's what's going to get removed from the selection. So just remember, Shift is add, Command or Control is remove, and then Alt lets me zoom, or not zoom, but pan around. One other feature that sometimes makes selection a bit easier is just knowing that there's different behavior whenever I click and drag from left to right versus from right to left. So we're going to use this taxiway up here as the example. If I click from right to left, you can see this taxiway in the top does not get selected until both the start and the end point of that taxiway are within the bounding box. However, if I drag left to right, you can see that as soon as any part of the taxiway gets in there, it selects. So that can sometimes be helpful. Let's say I selected a bunch and just wanted to remove this one on the bottom. I could hold down Command and then just come in from the right to the left and just deselect that. So that can be helpful. It's also worth knowing that we visually kind of represent the size of the taxiways. So if I were to select these and I said I want to change my width, they are 82 feet here. If I went to 500 feet per se, you can see that all these other taxiways actually became very small. And that's because we're trying to scale them all based on what everything else is. Likewise, if I just change these to 50 feet, you'll see that now these are smaller than the other taxiways. So it's worth trying to make the taxiways as realistic as possible when it comes to width. We do take that in consideration whenever doing pathfinding. So you can use tools like Google Earth. They have a measurement tool just to kind of calculate what the width is for a taxiway, and then just try to make that pretty realistic. So I'm going to undo the change that I made here. We're going to do a bulk change, change the name back to blank because that's what they were. And then the width here at this airport, everything was defaulted to 82 feet. So we made that change. So that's the overview of selection mode. Getting into some of the other modes, move mode is probably the simplest mode. And basically it lets you move taxiways around. Now, there is something going on here. You'll see as I get close to this taxiway down here, it sort of snaps into that. So that's good. It kind of helps prevent the problem that we were having here where there was gaps. You can see I can actually close that gap just by dragging it close to it. And that will close that. But sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes that messes you up. So there's a few things. You can change the snap distance down to 0 feet. In which case you can see it's not snapping at all. Additionally, I believe you can hold down Alt. Yes, so I am now holding down Alt, and you can see it's not snapping, but whenever I release, it does try to snap. So it's just going to snap to whatever nearest point. Like if I want to remove that, just hold down Alt. So that's worth knowing in move mode. Everything else is pretty straightforward here. The next mode that we have is create mode. So I can hit C on my keyboard and that gets me into create mode. let's say that you were at an airport that had no taxiway data and you needed to start from scratch. There's this ability to create taxiways anywhere. If I click that, then anytime I click, you can see it's starting a new taxiway. To stop creating a taxiway, I can right click and you can see that that goes away. Generally, you won't use that. Sometimes when you're creating taxiways, if this is on, you'll miss the fact that like I'm actually trying to extend it. So that's defaulted to off, but it's there if you need it. Generally, when you use create mode, you are using some of the taxiway data that's already there and extending it. What that does is it keeps all the data about that taxiway. It keeps the width of the taxiway and it keeps the name of the taxiway. So that's helpful. So let's go over here to an area where I actually have a named taxiway. And we'll just go up here. And so this is golf. You can see whenever I click an endpoint, it is now, the line is green, and now I'm just extending golf. And so I can just keep left clicking until I'm done, and then I can right click. Likewise, if I did this taxiway over here, which is unnamed, you can see that my line will become blue, and it is adding those taxiways. There are some other hotkeys in this mode that are worth noting. If I hold down Shift, you can see that we get this little red dot. What that red dot lets us do is subdivide a taxiway. So let's say that I needed to make an intersection here and branch off. I could hold down Shift and click, and you can see we now have a new node, and it's kept this and it's added a new taxiway over here. And now I can branch off from this node right here and create my taxi paths. Also, while creating it, it actually tries to be smart about letting you snap to different points. So you can see here, it's trying to snap over here. I could hold down Alt to remove snapping again. But also, if I'm getting close to another taxiway, it will say, hey, you probably want to, if you want to connect it to there, it will do the subdivision for me. So here, these are going to cross, and there's actually no intersection here. It won't try to route me this way. So that's worth noting. But if you see that red dot, that means that it will create an intersection there. And if I go to move mode, you can actually see here we have an intersection that we can move, but here we don't. There's no intersection there. Changing this actually moves things. We can actually go now to selection mode, and I can show you how easy it is to delete these guys. We can just select them and delete them. But just the quick recap, if you see that red dot, you are subdividing a taxiway. And if you need to disable snapping, Alt is your friend. It will let you drop the point wherever you want. So that's create mode. What else can we cover? So I know there's questions about how to deal with runway crossing. So I think this is a good place to talk about this because this is generally where you run into this. A lot of airports, they will see that they kind of curve down. Sometimes they don't cross a runway. Sometimes they do. I think I can show, I don't know if we have example. Yeah, so this is close. So here the Asobo data actually had it crossing this runway. People wonder, is it best to like have these paths that go down here? Is it not? Honestly, my opinion is model it as best as it is based off of the real taxiways. So you can see at this airport, there's actually, there are lines that go down these paths, but here they have them connected. I would even say it might be worth not connecting them there just because if it does be connected, it may try to route you around there if it's crossing a runway. But in this case, we also have the straight line going across, so the algorithm will work on crossing you here. So I don't really have like a good, like this is how you need to do it every time, but really it's model it as best as you can based off of what the airport looks like the taxiways would be. So let's move on to parking mode. I know that's the new mode that we created. So in parking mode, there are two main things that we can talk about parking. I'm actually going to switch my airports here to McCollum. So here we can see there's this concept of spots that potentially could be a parking spot. and spots that we actually have data for them being parking spots. You can see here these black dots, and I know it's kind of confusing. Google has these little pointers as well. So this is a good place for me to actually maybe switch to the street map. These black dots right here are where we actually have parking information from the Asobo data. So if I click on one of them, well, that's for me testing. Spirit doesn't land there. But you can see that there's a name, there's a terminal, and then a type. So the only thing that's really required on these is the name. Asobo defaulted to all these being park. That's really not necessary. And then they have these as small ramps. You can leave it blank or none. Asobo actually has both, which is kind of annoying. But the only thing that's required is name. Now, I know that we mentioned these potential parking spots. What we do is we look for any other taxiways that sort of dead end, and we say that that is a potential parking spot. So here it says, oh, these guys are dead ends, and if we actually look at the Google map, it looks like maybe you could park there, maybe you can't. These are definitely parking spots that we could add, but I can say you can add a name there and save this, and what will happen is that will turn into a black dot, and we can then remove it, and it'll go back to gray. So that's a way that you can add parking spots. Let's say that I even wanted to add spots for these. We can kind of really demo that real quick. We can go to create mode. I can hold down shift and I could subdivide this taxiway right here and then just bring that down there. And I'll right click to clear that one. I can subdivide here and here. You can see I'm just doing this all down the road. And now we can extend these down, and I'll extend this one down. And I'll extend this down, and you can keep doing that. But now if we go to parking mode, which is P on the keyboard, you can see all these now are labeled as potential parking spots. And so maybe this is spot number 52, and it's a small ramp. So now it turns black, that data is there. I'll show bulk edit parking at another airport, but something else that I want to show here is the ability to add points of interest. So not only are we dealing with parking, but we're also dealing with some things like visual reporting points. So right here, you can see that here we have a quarry. It's pretty obvious. If we click in that area, we get this little pop-up, and this allows us to create these reporting points. So here I can just say this is the quarry. Quarry has 2 R's. And this is a reporting point. When we save this, we can see that this is going to turn blue. I think of blue as in the sky. So these are things that you could see whenever you're in the air. Some airports have good VFR reporting points. This is how you would label those in here. Likewise, let's say that we had other areas of the airport that aren't necessarily parking stands, but places that you might want to go. So for instance, this is the customs office right here. I can click and say this is customs. This is a ground point, and I'll save this. And now if I wanted to get a taxi over to the customs office, it will take me here. These, again, can be clicked and dragged, so I can move them wherever I want to. And if I click on them, I can then delete them also. If I'm making one and it was a mistake, I can either hit escape or click somewhere else. It'll make a new one, or close this. So should be pretty straightforward. These only have names, so obviously name is required. If I don't type a name, it goes away. If I do type a name, you can see that will, it doesn't save. I actually need to click save for it to save. But name is required, obviously. Okay, let's go over to Atlanta, and we can talk about bulk parking information. So I'm going to, nope, that's not Atlanta, this is Atlanta. And I'm going to make a clone of this one. And this is a big airport, so it's got a lot of data. But I kind of want to show some of the bulk tools. So I'm going to click on this, and we'll go to parking. And now I'm going to do bulk select parking. So what this will let me do is select a bunch of parking areas at once. I can create that bounding box and select them all. This is really useful. Let's say that I knew all of these were for the Delta airline. I could select all these, And now I can make a bulk change right here, and I can just start typing Delta or DAL. And now all these, if I click this save, all of these are saved with Delta's information. You can see actually whenever I select them, it shows Delta because it knows they're all Delta. However, as soon as I select one that's not Delta, you'll see that Delta will go away. I can do the same sort of thing. I can bulk edit their names, which really isn't that useful because these generally should all have different names. Terminal is useful because these are all, Terminal Bravo. These should be all Terminal Charlie. And then I can modify gate type as well. All right, let's say that you're at an airport that really didn't have a lot of gate information. I kind of want to show you how you can do it with bulk. So we're actually going to remove these and I can kind of show you the process. We'll just do a few of them. What I would do is start by just setting the name. So let's go through these. We're just going to use 1 through 6. So I'll call that 1 and 2. I'm not going to worry about the terminal, the type, the airline, all that we can do in bulk. So there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. Once those names are saved, now we actually have a bulk or a parking spot that we can select with the bulk parking. You notice that bulk parking only picks up saved parking spots. It won't pick up potential ones. So we can select all these, and now I can say these are all for Terminal B. Save that. Save these all as gate small. Save that. And then we can save the airline to Delta. And now we'll see that all these share that information. Do want to talk a bit more about airlines. In the US, it's very common for a gate to only have a single airline, but I know in other countries, gates can be shared across multiple airlines. So what we can do is we can just kind of show that process. It's pretty straightforward, but when you select, we'll select all these. Let's say I just want to add Spirit Airlines. You can see that they are now saved in there. Always got to click the save for bulk changes. And if I pop open any one of these, you can see that Spirit is there as well. You can really save as many airlines as you want. There's no limit as far as TaxiTuner goes, so feel free to use that however you feel. The way it works though, whenever you're requesting parking, it takes a look at what airline you're flying for, and it tries to see if it can match you up to one that's exclusively yours. If not, it tries to match you up with one that is shared with you. And if it can't do that, then it tries to find one that's just open. So you can see like this one has no airline selected, so anyone could use that. You don't need to select every single airline that you want. If you just want it to be used by everyone, you can just leave it blank. So that's pretty much it about parking and how to modify that. Hopefully that answers a lot of people's questions. One other thing that I did want to show is not a lot of people know that they can use this tool to debug their flights. A lot of times I say, hey, why did I get these instructions whenever I landed? So let's take an example of that. Here you can plug in the flight ID. So I have a flight ID that I saw, 655129. Whenever you have a flight ID, what this is doing is it's looking for all the information that we had about that flight ID as far as takeoff and landing. So you can see here, these were two different calls that the AI made to get to the runway. I guess this is San Francisco. And then these were the ones to, upon landing, getting to parking. So you can see whenever you click on one of these, it actually pulls up these start and end points. And it really just shows the full taxi path. And here it kind of tells you, hey, we just computed this live in the UI. This is the taxi path it gave. It's worth noting that there are some optimizations that happen on the back end that you don't always see here. Also, I need to make sure that I selected the right override. So these don't always match up. These are actually going to be slower as well. Because the optimizations that we do for whenever we're just generating instructions, we don't actually need to go node by node. I don't want to get into all the details, but it is faster whenever you're calling air traffic control. But this kind of gives you a good representation of, hey, this is where my plane was whenever I called, and it's trying to get me here. It's actually getting you to the start of that runway. Likewise, here we can see whenever they landed, this shows some pretty interesting things. So you can see it shows this blue arrow right here. This is saying that this user touched down right here, and this was their velocity vector. The bigger this arrow is, the faster they were going. But they were generally headed in that direction. Maybe they were crabbing a little bit with the wind. There could be also magnetic deviation that's going on. But this will show this taxi path. So notice whenever it landed, it didn't just try to tell them immediately go back this way, but it did some computation to say, hey, they're going to need to slow down before they can actually exit the runway. So here it said exit at Mike. Actually, the instruction that they got was exit at November, which is, I think, a little shorter. But here it said Mike and then cross 19 left, Delta Golf, Golf 2, Golf Charlie, Charlie 3. And you can see this is the full path that it wanted you to take. So if you ever land, feel free to pull up your flight ID. A lot of you are flying IFR. You can just leave off the IFR or the VFR or just put the numbers. It works either way. And then make sure that you choose whatever clone you're using here. This is the global default, but maybe you were testing with yours, so just make sure that you have that selected. And when you do, it will draw that taxi path. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm sure there's stuff that I missed. Always hit us up in our Discord if there's any questions about how things work or best practices. We'll be happy to answer it. But I'm hoping that I really kind of dove into a lot of the nuances about how to use TaxiTuner. But if anything pops up, feel free to hit us up. And I'm going to close it here. So have a good evening. Bye-bye.